If you're anything like me, you're very much a back-end developer and not really as comfortable doing all the front-end styling elements. And this can be a real pain when you just want to quickly develop a prototype or just a very quick applet for something very specific. And you have to spend hours styling it, making sure it looks nice and ugh. The tool I'm showing you today, Mesop, allows you to not only create websites in Python directly, so no front end required, it also handles a lot of the styling for you, as long as you like Google's material styling, that is. It really is designed for building quick applications rather than anything fully fledged. And it comes with all the tools you need to get a site built and up and running quickly. On top of that, there's also loads of examples in the documentation, so you don't even have to write it yourself in a way. You could just create an applet using all these different examples. And again, that's really nice for the whole quick iterative prototyping thing. So in this video, we're going to be learning how to build a website using Mesop, and we're also going to be learning how to host it using this video sponsor, ClawCloud. Of course, if you like this video at any point, then consider leaving a like to let me know, and maybe subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And if you want to be the first to see new videos, become a member using the join button below. With all that out of the way, let's build a website in Python. It's always fun to say that. Before we install and get using Mesop, I just want to quickly talk about what it is. So it is a web framework, quote unquote, developed by Google. It's designed around AI applications primarily, but you can do whatever you want with them. You're not limited to AI. And it essentially allows you to create websites in Python itself. You don't have to do any front end, any JavaScript whatsoever. And there's a lot of different components that come with that. If the components don't match what you want to do, you can just come to the home page and then click open a new tab here. And you get taken to the demo sandbox area. And this is where you could look at all sorts of things from this chat window here to say how a dialog box works. So you can see that. You can do like basic animation. You can see how text works and all this. Learn how to do images, and all the code is here on the right hand side. So if you want something you want to do, you could just take it from here, which is actually really nice for just very quick iterative development. Mesop can also create a project for you out of the box once you install it. So we're going to be having a very quick look at that. We're going to be creating a chat application based very heavily on this chat thing here, just a really simple one to get you into what Mesop is. And then we're going to be having a look at one that I built from scratch, and you'll be able to tell I built it from scratch because it doesn't look as nice as the others, but it gives more examples about different input types in the state and all that. So if you come over to our editor, we can install Mesop using pip install Mesop, and I am using version 0.14.1 in this video. And once you've done that, you can run Mesop init. And this will give you a little sample project. So you get this main.py. You also get some instructions on how to run it. So you have this Mesop command. If you pass it a file, it will launch a Flask server in the background on port 32123. And then you can access it from there and it will run the server for you, which is quite nice. In this main.py, you have the state, you have the page definition. We'll be going over this in more detail when I go over the other examples. But it relies quite heavily on this with me.box. You'll see this a lot in Mesop, and this is just a container. I guess you could think of this as a div. And you have your style parameters. You can also outsource components to separate functions. So this header text, for example, has another box in it with some text, and that just gets called here. So you can compartmentalize your application. And it's quite a complicated example. If we just run it, and we'll take a quick look at what it is, because you can obviously just run this on your own machine. And if we do localhost 32123, this is what we get back. So we get this Mesop starter kit with this fancy title. We get some buttons. We get a prompt, hello world, or hello worlds. It's not an actual AI application. We can like how to tie a shoe, click that. You get a little footer down here. It's quite a nice little starter application. So if I head back to the editor, we will get started and we close that. Oh, actually, before we go into that, I do want to talk about this exception, unexpected CSP violation. You'll only see this if you are on Firefox. You might see this if you're on Safari. I don't know if Safari is Chromium based, but anything that is built on top of Chromium, you won't see that error. It's developed by Google. They test it on Chrome, as you would expect. There is an open issue about this. No one seemed to know where it was happening. As far as anyone can tell, it doesn't actually affect any of the functionality. it's just a bit annoying to have this in the terminal. So this will only happen if you're on Firefox, but it's not a big deal, at least as far as I can tell. We can get rid of it though. I'll come over here and we'll do chatbot.py, and we will create a little chat application. So we could do import.env, and the reason we're doing that is because I have my OpenAI API key in this .env file here, and if we actually want to use that, we'll need to do pip install python .env. That's not the only thing we'll need to install for this example, so I'll just leave that there. Have import Mesop as ME. This is convention. We can also import Mesop.labs as MEL, and this is essentially, if you want to cheat real hard, then you can use Mesop Labs. This has a few fully fleshed out kind of applets that you can use in your own applications. So there is a lot of demo material with Mesop, which is really nice. And then we also need to do from OpenAI import OpenAI, and then we need to pip install OpenAI here. I already have both installed, but we're using versions 1.0.1 of .env and 1.59.7 of OpenAI. And now we can use .env to load the contents of our .env file into environment variables. And that's all that's doing. And create a client. If we just set OpenAI, this will use the environment variable to get our key, so we don't have to pass it through here, which is nice. And we are going to create a def onload function, which takes an event. This is normally just the letter E, but I'm going to use event just to make it a bit clearer. We'll do me.load event. Most functions in Mesop will take an event of some description, and we'll see more about that later. And then we could do me.set theme mode. And then we could do system, light, or dark. So this is basically setting the broad color palette. You can change the theming if you want, but pretty much the whole point of Mesop is that you don't really need to think about that. So this will change it to whatever is defined on the system, which in my case is dark. So we're going to define our page using the me.page decorator. We need to have a path, which I'm just going to set as the root, so you can set as anything. Going to have the title, which is, say, Cabra chatbot, and then onload equals onload, and this will run our onload function here. So this will set the theme when the page is loaded. We then define a function. We can just call this page. You can call it whatever you want. And real cheating, we could do mel.chat, and this will essentially create a full chat application for us. We also need to pass a function, which we'll define later, and we'll call it transform. This will be what turns an input into an output. So this is what actually calls the AI. And then we need to call it a title. We need to give it a title, sorry, which will just be a demo applet. Sure, why not? And then the bot user. So this is the name of the bot user, and we're going to call this Cabra GPT, even though it's just going to be ChatGPT 3.5. And then we come down here and we define our transform function, and this will take an input, which is a string, and our history, which is a list of chat message objects, which is a little bit inconvenient for us, but it doesn't matter too much. We then want to create a response, and we do that using client.chat. I did do a video on OpenAI a little while ago, though now I say that video is now outdated, so maybe don't go and watch that. We could do client.chat.completions.create, and then we set the model, which is just going to be GPT 3.5 turbo, because it was a good enough example. And then we want our messages, which is the full history, and we actually have to convert our list of chat message objects into a list of a dictionary. So we could do role equals message.role, and then content message.content for message in history. Is that correct? That is not correct. What's going on there? Oh, I just added that. I didn't need that. So we don't actually need the input at all, but it does still get passed through. And then you want to yield your resp choices. The first one, .message.content. And the reason you yield is because if you were streaming something, you would yield each chunk. We're sending the entire message back in one go, so it doesn't matter. But you could chunk this message, or if your LLM sends its message in chunks at a time, then you can yield each individual one, and that would actually render as generating on the site, if that makes sense. But that is our full example. In 25 lines of code, we have built a front end for an actual chatbot that is hopefully going to work. I have funded it, but I don't trust it to not show me up. So we could do Mesop chatbot.py, and that turns on, as we can see. We come over here, reload the page, and we now have this demo applet up here. We then have a prompt, hello world. We get this loading bar for us, and this is actually the AI. How can I assist you today? And we can ask it a very existential question, something like, what is AI? And it will actually come back to us. AI, artificial intelligence, is a branch of computer science, yada, yada, yada. But you can see it is actually a chatbot rendered, and we can scroll up and down. We see it scrolled down a little bit there. And you can see it's coming in all in one go. If you were to yield chunks, you would see that it was streaming. But we don't really need it because ChatGPT 3.5 is pretty quick. And you also, by default, I think this only comes up if you select system. We have this icon up here where you could change between light and dark mode, which is actually really nice. So I think, let me just try that actually. If I were to set this to dark. Oh, it's still there, okay. And actually I made that change there, and you see hot reload starting, hot reload finish. If I were to change this to say Carbra GPT and then hot reload, when I go back, it will say Carbra GPT here. Some changes you will need to refresh your browser completely, but some can be hot reloaded like that one. This is a more advanced example of a little demo front end to a package that I developed called Analytics. Any long-term viewers of the channel will be more than aware of Analytics' existence. For those of you that don't know, it connects to the YouTube Analytics API. It takes a number of things. These are all different inputs really. And then it pulls down some data from the YouTube Analytics API, essentially. Where you can use the state here to have selectors or inputs like drop downs, date selectors, all that stuff. We can then store the value of the selected fields in the state and then use that elsewhere. So this state sort of becomes a global in a way. And this is really what I wanted to show off here. So when I load the page, I create a state. You don't need to do it right here. You also don't need to pass it around. I just wanted to show you that you could. But you create a state instance using me.state, and then you pass the state class, which is this, and you need to decorate it with me.state class. This turns it into a data class, which is why you can use data classes.field around the place. And then in our input section, we have this select option, and this is the example I'm going to use, called dimension. So this is a drop-down menu to select the dimension that we want to use. And there are various other things here about the appearance. You also have your options, which is a list of select option, which is a bit awkward to use, as you can see, but it works. You also have this on selection change, which is a callback that is called whenever you actually select one of the options. And this callback is a lambda that takes the event and sets the state dimension attribute to e.value. So e.value here will be the selected value from the select box, and then we set that to state.dimension up here. So this becomes whatever the value is. This then happens a few times, and we can go down here and see that we can recreate a state instance down in this function here, and then we can call state.dimension here. So we're not actually passing state.dimension through, we're instead storing it on a globally accessible data class, and then we can create it here and then use it here. We then also do all this, and then we set back a value to state.results table, and this will be a dictionary, which can then be rendered in a different part of the application. So we create the state again here, and then we create a data frame using this, and then we use me.table to render the data frame. You might be wondering why I'm not just storing the data frame directly on the state, and that's because anything you store on the state needs to be JSON serializable. So there are extra constraints This is why we convert it to a dict down here and why we load it back up from a dict up here, because that's just the easiest way to go about this. That was kind of weird to get used to at first because there are really a number of restrictions. So you can't use anything that doesn't have a stable string representation either, which is really weird. But yeah, there are limitations to the state, just to make you aware. And to show you how this works, I'm going to set up and run this on a ClawCloud VPS instance. I've been trying out ClawCloud's VPSs and I found them really easy to set up. And once they were set up, I actually found them really quick as well. It's the same flat fee no matter what region you set it up in, meaning you can set it up somewhere close to you. And each region collaborates with multiple mainstream local ISPs, both of which mean you get a fast and reliable connection. It's quite a bit more responsive than the VPS that I use at the moment, which is all the way over in Atlanta. And to be honest, I'm actually thinking about migrating everything over to a ClawCloud instance. So let's get this thing set up. So to do that, we're going to go over to our web browser. We're already on the ClawCloud website. And we're going to go to the client area. If you don't have an account, you'll need to sign up beforehand. We're going to go to the client area and it'll ask you to log in. I'm already logged in, so it's not going to do that. To order a new VPS, we need to come up to services and then order new services. And then we get a selection of the power that we want our VPS to have. So if you look at this one, it's 1 core, 1 gig of RAM, 20 gig SSD, and 500 gigs of bandwidth. And you have 4 different levels that you can choose from. We're going to choose this first one here, which starts from $3 a month. And then we're going to choose our billing cycle. We're just going to do monthly. You can also choose your server location. Do make sure to pick the one that is closest to you. In my case, that is Frankfurt in Germany. And it doesn't actually cost anything additional to have it in these places either. Sometimes these VPS companies charge you more to have it in Europe or something. ClawCloud doesn't do that, which is nice. We can also select our image. We're just getting a series of Linux images here. If you wanted Windows, you select one from the previous menu. We're just going to select Debian 12 and hit continue. And on this screen, if you have a coupon code, you can enter it here. I have a demonstration one that I'm going to use just to kind of show things off. So we're going to put that. I've read the terms and conditions and then we are going to check out. And now the VPS will be provisioned and within a few minutes, it will be up and ready to go. And then once you're back on this page, you'll have a service here. I have 2 because I had one for planning. So we can click that. And my one that I've just created is this bottom one here. So we can click these 3 dots and click view details. And these are all the details you need to log into your system. So you have your IP address, you have your root, and you have your password. So we're going to copy this IP address. We're going to head over and then SSH into it using SSH root at that, and it's going to ask us for our password, and now we're in. So to start setting up our VPS to run our application, we need to do sudo apt install nginx, which is what we'll be using to host it, and then Python 3.11-venv because we need to create a local environment. And actually I need to do sudo apt update and upgrade before I do that, so give me a second. Always make sure that you run apt update before you run any apt commands, otherwise it will not work properly. We could just install those, and then we need to make a dir. Well, I'm going to make a dir anyway, and we're just going to call it reports app, and this is where all our files will be, and then we cd into that. And then we want to create a virtual environment. You might want to set this up slightly differently. I'm just using a very simple setup here. To get this up and running. So we can do source.slash.venv, whoops, bin activate. There we go. We're now in a virtual environment. We can now pip install Analytics, Mesop, and Pandas, which is what we need to run our application. Now that we have all our packages, we can actually transfer all of our files over to the VPS. You can do this using Git if you want, if you have a project. I'm going to do it via SCP because that's just easier and quicker right now. So we're going to do SCP reports.py. We want our secrets.json and we want our tokens.json. I'm passing this through because Analytics' authorization flow, if you're using a web app, is really complicated. And I don't really want to deal with that. So we're just passing pre-authorized tokens through. And we want to set that to the root and the IP address, which I'm going to have to refetch. And we want to set where this is going to go. So this would be /root/reports app. It'll ask us for the password. And now it's going to send the files over. And if we list the files here, we can see that they're there. So all of our Python stuff is in place. We now just need to set up nginx. So if we clear this, so we get some extra room, we could do sudo nano /etc /nginx /sites available, and we're going to call this reports app. And this will be our configuration for this particular server. So we're setting up a reverse proxy for Nginx to send requests to. And we can set one up using this code here. And I just need to, well, first I need to change this port to 32.123. And I need the IP address. Hopefully it'll still be in the paste buffer. It was not. There we go. So we're listening on port 80, which is the standard web port. We set the server name to our IP address, and then we set our location up to pass the request to our web app. And then we set some headers here as well. So we can save that. We then need to create a symlink to sites enabled from sites available, which you can do with this command. And then we just need to remove the default one that Nginx has to avoid any confusion, which is this default one here. So we can get rid of it like that. Just to make sure everything is up and running properly, we can do sudo nginx test to test our configuration, and it's fine. And then all we need to do is sudo systemctl start, or restart if it had already been enabled, nginx, and now that's running. So now we've done that, we could just do mesop reports.py, and we'll be able to see our application in all its glory. And now we can come over to a new tab, put in our IP address and do /reports, because this is the path that we set on this application. And we get our little thing. So if I zoom this in so you can see it a bit better, we have our dimension. So we have our all sorts of dimensions. These are all the different dimensions you can do. When we click day, that will now set that dimension in the state. You also have your filter. So this is actually an example of some interactivity. So if you set country here, this filter value box will now appear because we've set that as an if statement where if the, let's see if I can find it, where if this filter key is set, then the filter value box appears. So that's how you can do some interactivity. We're going to refresh that page because you don't actually want those filters. That's just going to cause more problems than it's worth. And then we could set multiple metrics as much as we want. So we could set, say, views, read views, playlist views, likes, and then we can set a custom date range as well. And this is a date picker. So this is setting both the start and the end date here. So we're going to set, say, like the 1st to the 7th of December. Then we hit this fetch report button and we get an error. Okay, we'll get rid of playlist views. That was an analytics error. I've built this library, you'd think I know how to use it, but there you go, and you get a table back. So this is a pandas data frame done as a table. But without the state, this wouldn't be possible because the dimension, the filter value, all the metrics, and then the date range are all stored in the state, ready for this fetch report function to then use them all in the actual API request. Let me know what you're thinking about building using Mesop in the comments below. If you want to see all the other ways that Python is awesome, you can do so by clicking the Python is Awesome playlist link on the end cards. And I'll see you in the next one for whatever we do next.